to Poetically Creative Mind podcast hosted by me, BM the Poet. This podcast is for people with a creative mind who need a little inspiration. I will be interviewing everyday people with creative minds, doing original poetry for myself and others, having inspirational conversation, and more. This podcast will be available wherever you get your podcast from. Today's guest is a former Marine and top business executive. He has helped for-profit and nonprofit organizations grow through his valued insight. He has also mentored countless young men and women to help them gain a better understanding of life and being a leader. He is also the former CEO of Akaya Youth Project, Inc. and Akaya Music Group. Darrin has spent countless hours dedicating himself to aiding the youth, bringing awareness to mental health, and assisting veterans through his volunteer work. Through his motivational speaking and books, Darrin's drive is to inspire and help people and businesses reach their full potential. If you would like to know more about Darrin, you can check him out at www.darrinlharris.com, www.zerostigma.org, and you can also check them out on social media, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube at Darrin L. Harris. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to introduce to you Darrin L. Harris. How you doing today, sir?
All is well, all is well. Thank you for inviting me to the show. I'm excited to be here today.
Thank you for coming. I appreciate it. So could you tell the people a little bit about yourself, the people that don't know you?
My name is Darrin L. Harris, and I really like to describe myself as a social entrepreneur, one who seeks to help individuals to increase their influence so that they can build high-performing, high-impacting, sustainable organizations that change their part of the world. That's what I would like to consider myself. At this time, I'm also a disabled vet. And so I spend most of my time now volunteering and helping, individuals who want to increase their influence. And I do that in various ways through social media is the primary way. I also have a radio show that's going to be starting in September. It's Monday through Friday. It's called Defining Moments at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So that's exciting. That's coming up. And I've been putting a lot of time and energy. Once again, my time is spent volunteering, and, that's what I believe in doing. I call it building community credit. And when we do this and paying it forward, it always has a great return. We invest in what we value. And so that's what I like to do. So in a nutshell, that's what I do. But who I am is basically a down home New Orleans 504 boy. I grew up in New Orleans. I went to public schools all my life, WCC Claiborne, which is now Parkview Elementary in Gentilly Woods. I went to Fannie C. Williams Middle School and then to McDonough 35, the Rod Eagles. So, college preparatory, blue ribbon school. I got to throw it all in there. That's McDonough 35. But, I had a great experience there. But aside from that, I started preaching at 15 years old. I gave, a lot of my time. A lot of my time has been in the public and speaking, a lot of speaking. So I also volunteer time with coaching other individuals who want to build their speaking ability. So I do that through various means as well. And that's really, really been a highlight of what I do. A lot of people want to know, well, how do you make it look so easy? And I usually tell them, it only looks easy because I work hard. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's true of everything. But once I graduated from high school, I didn't go straight into college. I had a very rough or difficult time in my senior year in high school. My younger brother, who was 15 years old, he was killed by a blue bullet. And when I say a blue bullet, I mean law enforcement. And we never, even to this day, have got any resolve about that. But it changed a lot about me. I was very angry. I was very upset, but I still had my faith. And a month after he passed, and that was October 3rd of 1993, on November 3rd, I was, raising my hand to join the United States Marine Corps.
Thank you for your service.
And thank you for your support. So I'm a veteran. So I've already said, kind of exposed that. I'm also a United States Marine Corps veteran. I did my time. I did 4 years in the Marine Corps. I spent most of my time at Marine Corps Base Hawaii, which is Kaneohe, which is usually people call it, Oahu. So I spent time there. After that, I returned back to the continental U.S. and right here in Florida. So Orlando. I landed in Orlando, and I went to school there, a university called Full Sail University, where I learned recording arts. And after I graduated from there, I did a couple of things. I was hired by that university to be a lab instructor. But in addition to that, I also worked for a company called Sound Deluxe Showworks. And so I was really involved in the entertainment world and industry for quite some time, for about 6 years, until I returned back home to New Orleans. And I didn't just go because I wanted to go. I went because I had a very tragic event that happened to me that was really life-changing and tragic for me. A young lady who I was dating, but I wasn't dating at the time. She had completed suicide. And,
Sorry to hear that.
yeah, it was a very difficult time for me. And through all of that and having unresolved, and it's really important for me to say that, unresolved issues around my brother, unresolved challenges that I experienced in the Marine Corps due to an accident and having traumatic brain injury, but too afraid to talk about what was happening to me because you just don't do that. You know what I'm saying? Because there's a fear that service members have when you're active duty. So you don't go to sick call in the Marine Corps. You tough it out. And I believe many veterans in all services, whether they're in the Air Force, in the Army, the Coast Guard, Marines, the Navy, we don't go to sick call. We don't go to the doctor because you're a Marine or you're an airman or you're a soldier, and you're just taught that. And what I was experiencing, you just definitely don't talk about those things because it after the traumatic brain injury, it really was a lot of mental things starting to emerge, and I had what I didn't know what it was called at that point, but it's called psychosis. I had my first episode of psychosis. But long story short, all of that stuff started to really emerge after the death of this young lady who I loved, and I was Baker acted. My first time in a mental health hospital was in 2003, right here in the state of Florida. And if you know anything about being Baker acted, it's not voluntary.
Not at all. Not at all. I've heard many people have to deal with that situation. So yeah, I know a little bit about that.
You become a ward of the state. You become property of the state, I should say. And it was for my good and in my best interest. I do believe that the individuals at that time, they were doing what they felt was the right thing. And so, I had to deal with it. But that was my first encounter with being in a mental health system. And I think I had about 2 more before I actually returned back to New Orleans, all in the same year. Even though I had been seeing a therapist, my place of employment, they had recommended highly that I do that, but I just could not get it together, no matter how hard I tried. And, I ended up back home in New Orleans, where I ended up in another, in the VA hospital there. So my journey been very challenging. So, in my book, I talk about, and it's not even chronological. It's just in an order where was flowing to me to get out what I felt would be most logical for people to understand, and then take them back and then take them forward, how I experience life. You know what I'm saying? So
yes,
even the book is written in such a way, a strategic way that kind of brings you in and out, and it explains why certain things happen when they did, and not just when they did, but why they did and how they did it and where they did. All those things are important.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry to hear about all those tragedies that have befallen you. So with those tragedies occurring, is that one thing that inspired you to want to help others and motivate others to be their best self?
Well, absolutely. I mean, my life has been a series of defining moments. uh, these points of clarity, these aha moments, they usually don't arrive in my life until after I'm in too deep or
Mm-hmm.
I have gone too low. And then all of a sudden, this it's like this resurgence or emergence and or even synergy of what was, what is, and what will be all emerges together, and that is my defining moment because I'm able, at my lowest point, even if I was high, you hear me, even if I was high at my lowest point, even when high, that's when this emergence or this there's this intersectionality of of life for me begins to intertwine, and those are the aha moments or defining moments. In fact, I wrote a song about it. It's not really a song, but it's an inspirational song that's you can find on uh, YouTube or Amazon or wherever. All that stuff, right?
What's the name of that song, by the way?
Defining moments.
Defining moments. So
So
if you get a chance to check it out on YouTube, please do that.
yeah, and I have a YouTube channel, by the way. So that's something exciting. So I put a lot of information there. So if I could fast forward to being at home, trying to recover from substance abuse, trying to recover and that's all substances. There was no, when people ask me, what was your drug of choice? More, more, that's the only answer I could get. More was the drug of choice. So whatever I could get my hands on, that's because I wanted to numb the pain. So, that's one part of it. So fast forward, I'm in the mental health hospital. It's 2003. I'm in the veteran homeless program in New Orleans, and I'm in treatment. I'm living with a whole bunch of veterans in this, place. I don't know what it was, but it was for homeless vets, and I'm grateful for it. And so I went through the program, and after you go through the program, you sit in there with a VA nurse, and you go to meetings. It's very structured, and it at first it's annoying because all you do is you sit around a bunch of addicts or sit around a bunch of homeless people and veterans. And veterans are special and unique in so many ways, which I would love to talk about a little bit later about veterans. The Veterans Justice Program or the Veterans Justice Outreach, which wasn't available to me at the time, but some of the services are similar. So once I graduated from the program, here was another aha moment or defining moment for me because, yes, I feel better. I'm getting my mental health in check, even though my mental health challenges didn't have a name to it at this point. I still don't know why I'm experiencing these ups and downs. Why am I seeing animals when I'm exhausted? Those type of things. I'm
Yeah.
still not able to get a name to any of it. But I know when it happens and why it happens and how to stop it from happening. Well, I thought I did. That's why I would self-medicate, right? Um, but with all that said, in my throes of addiction, and I said my drug of choice was more. There was one particular time, one specific time and only one time at that point, that I had shared a needle on Tower Lane. If you know anything about Tower Lane in New Orleans, Louisiana, it is not the place you just hang out and eat crawfish, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very dangerous, but my drug of choice was more. And I shared a needle with a gentleman, and when that happened, life, I felt something different. It wasn't just a drug. I knew it wasn't just a drug, and that was the day that I seroconverted, and I was diagnosed. I wasn't diagnosed until February after graduating from the program, but I knew on October 31st at around 6 p.m. when I shared that needle. I didn't know what it was, but I knew something different was happening, and it wasn't just a drug. It was HIV.
Oh, sorry to hear that.
Well, life has consequences, and our choices have consequences, good or bad. Consequences come with everything. I mean, I resolved, it's 18 years later now. And that's why I try to tell people 18 years later, I'm undetectable. And, which means I'm probably in a better shape than most people. And I talk about how important it is to take care of yourself, take care of your health. And it's not this dreaded thing that people once thought of. It is not a death sentence. If you take care of yourself, you'll be a better person. And I share that because if you look at my life, and people often do, they say, wow, you've been able to do all this, but they don't know all of that was because of all of that, or what this is because of all of that. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Had not all of that happened, all of this would not be. And so there was a price to pay. And no, I'm not proud of it, but I now have an obligation. I have a duty, because for me, this is not just, it's ministry for me. It's my mission. And so I use all of that. And I didn't, I really do believe that I did not plan all of this, you know what I'm saying? But life showed up. And
Lord always has a path for you.
And this is the path. And there are people who are suffering in silence with their mental health, with their physical health challenges. But I am that person that's that bold enough that I say it. And I say it clearly. I say it loud. I say it boldly, because, I want people to know, number one, not just as it relates to mental health or substance abuse or even living or allowing HIV to live with me. I've learned that, it's a relational thing. It's not a death sentence. I've been able to do all the stuff that people see on the books, or, all that happened after. You understand what I'm saying? So There is hope, but people won't know that there's hope unless I tell the story. That's why I'm talking to you right now, to let people know that
tell your story.
Yes, all that stuff will happen to you and can happen to you. However, I'm an example. I'm a proof. 18 years later, I'm not dead. I'm not the poster child for it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I do
a full life.
I do what's necessary to keep my health in check, right? And that's physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, all of those. It's all important if you're going to be successful. I am the model. I guess I am a poster child for something, a poster boy for something. But I know it's important. But there are many people like me, and but I think that they're not willing to share their story for many reasons, especially as it relates to living with HIV. Mental health was a difficult challenge for me to get people to talk about it. I had to drive across the entire state of Louisiana in order for the nonprofit that I was blessed to participate in and to found and to work with so many great people, which I call team members. And still to this day, we're family, really, still to this day. But I had to go tell my story. I'm talking about over 64 parishes, just talking and talking and telling my story. And the more I told my story, you know what happened? Other people were willing to tell their story. Mm-hmm. And as they told their story, guess what? Other people were willing to tell their story. This is what John C. Maxwell calls adding value to value. And it's what I do every day. The first thing I do when I wake up in the morning is I'm thinking, how can I add value to myself? I don't just think about ways of adding value to myself. Then I do things to add value to myself. So I go walking. And then as I'm walking, I'm thinking of ways to add value to others. And after I've finished thinking about how I'm going to add value to others, I get on Facebook or I post something. And then I don't just think about it anymore. I do things to add value to others. And then while I'm on Facebook, doing my Facebook Live in the morning, then I encourage others to add value to others. That's how it works. And so, my life has been one of defining moments, and I know I've talked a lot about different situations, but, it's not complex because I've lived it. It's not the greatest if people really knew what comes with it, there's a lot of aloneness. And I said aloneness opposed to loneliness because I'm never lonely. I always have stuff to do, and things to entertain. There's a difference between being lonely and alone. But in leadership, many times the aloneness is required. And that's why I think it's important, especially when I identify young leaders, to mentor them. It's important to mentor them 100% without a shadow of a doubt, because here's what I know. If I don't know anything else, if there are more people needing you than feeding you, then you're bleeding you. And so because I've had to learn the hard way, and because I've poured and emptied, and by the time I'm done helping everybody else, and it's kind of reverse codependency, because usually when you hear codependent, it's usually the needy, right? And the greedy. But there's also the need to be needed. And most leaders, automatically, we have a need to be needed. And when you put the needy, greedy with the need to be needed, it's a disaster waiting to happen. So, I'm always in tune, and I, try to identify those who come in my path or who ask, can you mentor me? Can you, I don't take that lightly, because I know what it's like to live the life of a leader without it, and the dangers of it. And it's very dangerous. So I wanted to share that.
Yeah, because speaking of mentorship, in your book, Living Life, Leaving Legacy, you have a chapter called Mentorship Matters. And there's a quote in there from John Maxwell. You spoke with him earlier. It says, leadership is about influence, nothing more, nothing less. So is that part of the reason why you became a mentor, knowing that, you could help influence people to do greater things, even with all your struggles and tragedies that you dealt with in your life?
No, if I had to be honest, I never wanted to be one. If I can be really honest, I never wanted to be a mentor. I never wanted to be a person of influence. I never wanted to be someone that people looked up to. That was never the plan. The plan was just to help people. But I emerged as this leader, and as one who people looked up to. And I've always known that, for a long time. Even, when I was in high school and growing up in Greater St. Stephen, I was a leader there. I mean, and I never really look at what type of impact that I've had on people. But I even today, I'll, find somebody that's on high school and they talk about how they admired me and looked up to me. That's a lot of pressure, a lot of weight to carry. So I never wanted it, because I see and I saw, what that entails. And I wanted to be normal, whatever that is, right? I didn't want the responsibility of that type of leadership on my shoulders. To be a leader in the Marine Corps and to be a leader in, I guess you could say, the civilian world or the real world is two different things. Taking charge, the leadership we talk about in the military. So let me be specific. That it's about taking charge. It's about getting it done. Mission accomplished. That's what we look at. But to be a leader outside of that, people admire you. They look to you. They look up to you. And I just know that that's still happening. And it doesn't really give leaders the flexibility to sometimes even be human, because people will build you up in their minds as this superhero, and due to no fault of your own, due to no fault of their own, because that's what they're looking for. They're looking for that person that can get them to where they need to go. And then when they spend a little time with you, they're like, oh, you sit on the toilet, you wipe just like me, what I'm saying? Same color. And I've always thought that, but then you'll run into other people who may be envious or jealous. And then that's a whole different thing, because they'll say things like, oh, you think you're all that. And I'm thinking in my head, no, you think I'm all that. If you only knew what I really thought about, I'm with me every day.
Yeah.
Second. And it's a very delicate dance and balance, because no matter whether I wanted it, no matter whether I like it, the gift that God has placed in me requires that, meet a certain standard, and that I deliver, a certain, because it comes with the gift, it's with the gift. And so I had to come to a place to accept the fact that, you know what, this is your norm. So stop saying you want to be normal. When we talk about what John Maxwell talks about, leadership is about influence. Well, yeah, once I accepted the fact I had this influence, then there was a responsibility that came with it. And so I look at that responsibility as being mentor and teacher, leader, guide. And that's not just the success. See, that's where I think people get it wrong because, of course, people want to know, how do I become successful? Show me all that. But I am so transparent. And when I show up in places or show up in rooms, whether they're virtual rooms or whatever, you're going to get flat out Darrin L. Harris and whatever you thought in your mind. That's why I try to come across really transparent in everything I do. So you may be looking for some spiritual guidance, but you might hear me say a 4-letter word other than love, and then it might throw you off. So I tell people, don't come with any expectations. Don't come with this preconceived notion of who I am, because when you meet me, it's going to force you to deal with everything about you. It's going to force you, and it may even disappoint you. And that's okay too. But I'm going to continue to be me, because what kept me sick and what kept me in the hospital, what kept me running and not trying to be me, what kept me going to the hospital over and over again is trying to live up to expectations that were unrealistic and meeting expectations of other people, trying to be there for other people, trying to do for other people. And at the end of the day, they had what they needed. I was left with nothing. That's why I got the whole concept. If there are more people needing you than feeding you, then you're bleeding you. And that's where that feeding part, that's the mentorship part. So mentoring to me is not just mentoring, but also being mentored. So it's a two-way thing. You have to, and you got to go out and look for them. You don't ever have to look for the needy and greedy. You don't have to look for people to say, will you mentor me? Those people will come, who are genuine and authentic. Sometimes they are genuine and authentic. Sometimes they come with other ambitions, I'll say. And so that's another thing, to be mindful of. But I know that influencing people is really important. And I know that I have that, even with some of, the tragedies in my life. People are influenced by how I get through those things. And that's why I think it's really important to be 100% real all the way, all the time. That's all I can be. Darrin L. Harris. Like it, love it, lurk it, loathe it. You know what I'm saying? Because I got lurkers too. And then I got the learners, and I know that all of these people exist, but at the same time, I just need the space to be me. And I'll say this, and a lot of people get leadership and management confused. I know without a shadow of a doubt, I am a leader, and management, I'm okay with that, and I can do a little bit of that. Leadership is when people follow you because they want to. Management, they follow you because they have to.
Yeah.
And I always say I would rather be a leader than a manager any day. But you have to be a good manager. And here's why. I don't see how you can lead any organization, really, and not have good management skills. And I talk a lot about that and other things. But yeah, I love John Maxwell. I'm a part of the John C. Maxwell team, actually. That gives me the ability, to teach his material, 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth and, so many other great books that he's written. And believe it or not, we have similar paths. And, he's a former pastor that, started looking for leadership in the church, but he couldn't find it, but he found it outside. And then he just basically made that his ministry. So, he's one of the people that I look up to as a mentor, but from a distance. Mm-hmm. And I have many, by the way, mentors, but for different things in my life. I would say this to any leader. If no one's following you, because leadership is about influence, right? Nothing more, nothing less. Everything rises and falls because of leadership. But if no one's following you, you're just taking a walk. And so, that's a time to really evaluate, am I really a leader? Some people say leaders are born. Some people say leaders are made. I say it's both, whether you're born with that quality or someone has trained you or mentored you to be. I think it's an ongoing process. It's just one of those things that I don't think I'll ever be able to shake. So I have to own the fact that this is where I am, and I have to decide what it looks like.
That's the end of part one of my interview with Darrin. But before I let you go, I have a poem that I'd like to share with you. If altering my past was a choice I had, I would leave it be, because that has made me me. Something I wish I had never endured, but it makes me smile bigger when I sit back and reminisce. I have endured some dreadful things, but when I survive it, it gives me strength. I can't change the past, good or bad, because that unknown journey is an unknown path. It may be better, it may be worse, but right now I'm living here on this earth. Thanks for coming on this journey with me. Please follow me at BM the Poet on Instagram and BM the Poet on Twitter. Please rate it 5 stars, subscribe, and share. Have a good evening.